Hello, I'm Nash Keaton, and you too can draw. What's important here is that this can be used as a tool for drawing. It's called Tiny Glade. It is a small video game on Steam that is still getting constant updates. I think it's really worth your time to take a look at it. Over the course of the video, we're going to be going through different ways you can approach, use, and then learn further using Tiny Glade as a miniature of sorts. It's actually very common to learn perspective from models and learning how to draw buildings, planes, elevations from those models. One of the hardest parts about building them, though, is that you have to be good at math. And remember, friend, you do not need to be professional or seeking professionalism to draw your fantasy maps and have a nice time. All you need is a backbone, and this can do it for you. We're going to cover assisted drawing. One of the things you'll constantly hear about is this thing called freehand. Freehand is not a completely agreed upon term, but when I personally use it, it is no rulers, no miniatures or photographs for the sketch. The hand is free, basically, from start to finish. And it is an admirable way to draw, and how I draw most of the time, but it is not the only way to draw. There's many different kinds of assisted drawing. You can be assisted through sketch, you can be assisted through the drawing itself, and you can also just have it as a reference, which would still count as freehand. Or you can do direct traces if it is your own thing you've created. I think what would be important here is if you do that you would need to reference back to Tiny Glade and see how they feel about it, if it's something you're going to in any way make money off of. But generally for traced stuff, I would suggest not doing that. Remember, never trace someone else's work and never claim that it's freehand. But you can take your own pictures, it's fun. Anyway, I'm going to go more in depth over the course of the video. This is just to give you a chance at expressing yourself in a hobbyist way where you don't have to burn your house down in order to learn how to do it. I also think it would be a great assist tool for comics, especially considering how fast singular artists have to have their turnarounds be, so it would be nice to already have a layout instead of having to figure that out with each individual drawing. Well, thank you for your time, and good luck.
So here's part one, the game. What it does is it has multi-functions, such as walls, buildings, and posts. And when you're working those things together, you can glue them in any way you want. So if I take this and I really start wiggling it, I can have even the slightest change and how I want things to fit together, and I can be real nasty about it. And it has Control-Z because it's a kind and good program. And there's a lot of things within this that are rare to find even in 3D programs to use, such as real-time shadows that don't need to be rendered out. So if we take the sun here, we can decide where it rises and falls. I want to keep it in the same place, so I'm not going to mess with it. But that means that if I were to draw this building at this time of day within my comics, I would not have to figure that out. I would not have to draw in what time that would be. I can just decide where sunset and sunrise is and what time of year it is. And that will tell me an unbelievable amount. Not to mention that it has spotlight options, so you can have secondary lighting and wonderful shots. You can have secondary lighting within all sorts of parts of the city, and you can decide how bright they are, which is unbelievable, honestly, that it allows for this, and allows you to glue these buildings together, and I mean like really glue them together. You can find the planes of all of your constructions within seconds. So if you have a question for anything that you want to rebuild slightly differently, it is easy to do. Within other programs like architectural programs, Blender, and others such, you are working with a program that is going to build real things. So it usually has things within it that allows you to build real things and measure real things at real assets. The problem with this is that I am stupid, and this is very, 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 very difficult, and it is ugly, and I am confused. So I have to copy-paste all the fun little gibby-gooks, all my fun little edges and pieces I have to decide on my own. This wonderful program, if you are within a certain length, it puts it on, takes it off, and it lets you do the impossible, or improbable, or things you shouldn't do OSHA-wise. And that makes things a lot easier for me. And it'll make things a lot easier for you. Because not only do we have the kind of lines of where everything attaches and we can find the planes of everything extremely easily, but there's also my favorite function in the game is the sky view. You have a map. That's it. It's correct with all your buildings. All your buildings are in the correct places. You can have the London style map. And then you can just mess it up. If you want it to be untrue in certain ways and like wrong in other ways because people are liars or they're stupid, you can do that on your own. That is 100% your choice. But look, there it is. All done. I didn't have to go and design every building individually and figure out how big I want it to be exactly and draw a box for that. I can just turn these into boxes. I can just simplify them on my own without having to destroy myself in the process of accidentally making a building that I wanted to be a certain size, not compare. In my crooked buildings, they're already crooked. My paths are decided. I just draw them in real nice, and it works out. And I think that is unbelievable. You can also get these fun, slightly isometric views for free. So if you want to draw your city at like those soft angles that a lot of old maps are drawn at for cities, you don't even have to, that's free real estate. You don't even have to pay for it. It's just already built in. You don't even have to struggle to find the perfect camera angle. It's already built in. You already have your foreground, middle ground, background. You can decide how much those lens captures are and how your depth of field is and all those little parts. And another great part is it has a walk around feature. I have never experienced a program that is for like architecture or any of that to keep track of it that has a walk around feature. That's just built. It just starts. You're already allowed to walk around it. You don't have to program it. You have your doors. You can compare yourself in your current height to that door. If we take this, pull this way back. Yeah, there we go. We know how tall we are compared to the door, so we know what height this is at. You can use the fly around camera for more precise gettings of heights, but like this is just so easy. It's ridiculous how easy this is. The fact that it just treats you that you already have legs. And I know it's made within a game program, so it comes with like a lot of those ideas built in. But like, why can't we do this with art programs? Why isn't this an option? I just want to be able to walk around the environment. Oh my god. Life is so much easier. I've saved hours, years of my time, instead of trying to draw cylinders in space. Because I want there to be a platform here. Every single time I draw it from a new direction, the cylinder is mashed out for me. It's not perfect for, I think, a long-term illustration, but comics... Oh my god, for comics, I like it so much better than most other programs I have access to. You can have all those like horrifically enclosed areas, and the objects that are further away in space stay there, so I don't have to figure out if you should be able to see one of the tall towers in the distance from this house. It's just there. It's just already there. And you don't have to be tormented with those ideas. One of the things I've tried to do in the past is just make small paper structures as like something I can use consistently. And it just never works out in the long run. I'm not good enough at building them. I'm not good enough at the architectural math it requires for me to keep track of them. But it also doesn't allow for the crookification unless I get very into it. See, the wobbliness? That's on purpose. People are horrible at building things. I've experienced a lot of man-made structures that are not OSHA regulated, which I realize is not maybe a experience everyone has. People can be good enough to build a house, but not good enough to make things level, because it's really regulation that causes those things. It's really that the systems and the education that comes with it that makes people even care about those things in the first place, instead of getting as much window as possible and still having drawer space underneath. The human desire to be symmetrical, if you will. But it just provides so much beautiful lighting And I get all of these. See, I would change these boards immediately, but I can do that so easily because this plane already exists. I wish I could go in and tell these where I wanted them to be. And I also wish I had a couple more window options of like different shapes and lengths up and down wise without having to just put them together. But it's not really a problem for this area. Gosh, life can be perfect. Look at that. We already know which way all the faces are going and where they're going in space, and we can just find them. After the fact, we don't need to be worried that we're not going to find them properly. They're right here. They have to be. Ugh. Life can be beautiful. All right. So one of the most important things I think people don't know about is that there is a difference between freehand and assisted drawing. And you shouldn't be afraid of assisted drawing. It's not bad for you. Especially if you're not going into art as a profession, I think assisted drawing is the best thing you could do for yourself. It is not necessary for you to sit around and learn how to draw cylinders, which you will spend a lot of time doing if you want to be a professional artist, if you just want to draw your town, you know? If you just want to draw your map or your town, I don't think you need to sit down and learn the fundamentals until you can do them without thinking. That's insane. You should do that if you are going to be a professional artist, though, and you do want that. So just remember that I'm saying this now. Those things and being able to do them are wildly important. So first, we're going to go through unassisted drawing. It's quite simple. Find your perspective lines. Find where you are in space, whether this is 3-point, 4-point, 2-point, or whatever perspective, and then redraw over it. Treat this like a sketch, not like a guide, and you'll be good. Also, you could just look at it. You could just use it as like a still life. It's no different than a miniature. You can take a look at it in the same ways as well. You can take a photo if you don't want it to move around too much or lose exactly where you were drawing from originally, the same way you'd put a piece of tape on a floor for a miniature. Yeah, you got this. It's just a miniature. Treat it like that. Light and everything. Now, assisted drawing. First, we're going to go through a list of tools. What's important about this list of tools is that I'm going to just rattle them off so you can have those, but then I'm also going... None of this is sponsored. I'm going to rattle off the list, and then we'll go through point by point of what each things of those are and why you should get them. All right. You want a T-square, French curve, lots of them, 360 protractor or any protractor, half is good too. A compass, architectural triangle set, big piece of board. It's usually called gator board, and a scale ruler. You're just going to want all of them. Just get all of them. If you never use one of the triangles again, you just have a ruler. That's a funny shape. Like, it's just as good as anything else for drawing a straight line. All right, T-square. This allows you to draw straight lines perfectly every time. You're going to take your T-square, but if you want to do this traditionally, I would suggest a big piece of gator board and you tape your piece of paper to that gator board, right? Okay. So when it comes down to it, the T-square is so not only so you can draw straight lines and find them, but also so you can find the different measurements and angles that you'll find with the triangles. The French curve, you won't believe this. Watch tutorials on the French curve. This is how most drawings are done quickly. Those amazing architecture drawings that you get for, like, I don't know, your new, let's say you're a business guy, your new management hall, it's done with a French curve most likely. These things are phenomenal. I love them. I don't have any currently because they were eaten by my roommates, but who knows where they took them. But no hate. They're wonderful little creatures. I usually keep one in the back of my sketchbook with right angle. I think I have an cute one right now, mini triangle. You can also get minis of any of these. I would suggest, if you don't want to take this too seriously, to get the tiny ones. When you go into the architecture center of your local art store, there'll be like a wall of all of these things except little, and that's so you don't have to work with the big piece of gator board. Though I would still suggest taping your paper to something that won't move. And that you can, like, 360 really easily and turn the paper. All right. We have the protractor. The protractor is for math. So I don't like the 360 ones, but most people say they like the 360 ones. I like the half. It's a lot easier on me personally. This is if you want to get into the greater parts of math in perspective. The compass is for your ovals. You are going to draw evil ovals through the rest of your life, and you're going to be finding evil ovals for the rest of your life. If you want to do these drawings more complex, you need circles and ovals and cylinders. Luckily, you can just math them out, and they will come out perfect every time if you're good at math, which I am not good at math, and they come out wrong 83% of the time. Hence why I like this game. It allows me to make things not wrong, or at least check if they're wrong. So in that regard, I don't have to be just walking around blind, unsure if I've done anything incorrect. All right. The architectural triangle set. Get as many triangles as you can. You look at that thing, if it doesn't got like every shape of triangle you know from high school, you don't got enough triangles. I like mini ones, personally, even if I'm working at like a large scale. I like to have a mini set. This is just because I find the huge ones are kind of unwieldy, and I find that they kind of slide around a bit much for me. You can look up tutorials for how to use any of these things if you do not know how to physically hold them. The last thing on your regimen of things I would suggest you buy if you are not an artist and you want to draw buildings and maps is Basic Perspective Drawing, a Visual Approach by John Montague. I have the 5th edition. I like the 5th edition. I don't know if the other editions are better or worse. But we'll cover that in a later section, more like thoroughly. So why you should give these a try is that you can draw. Anyone can draw. It's just a skill that is something you obtain over time. But what can be difficult is that the things you want from drawing aren't necessarily the things you get from getting good at holding a pencil. So a lot of, you've probably noticed people you know who are artists have characters or things that they love that are their own creation. And when it comes to this, you have to draw those yourself. You have to learn the fundamentals of how to hold a pencil and how to draw a solid object without having to have that be a unfun part of it. It's fun when you draw your character and they look good. It's fun, you know? It works out and it looks nice. When it comes to people I find that who want to draw buildings and who want to draw fantasy maps and love doing it and do it all the time, never get past the amateur level due to the fact that the things that would give them the time they need to be good at holding a pencil is not what they want to be doing. Just do assisted drawing. You'll get better at holding the pencil even when it's assisted. I would suggest also using tutorials in all things. Look up how to hold a pencil. Some French guy will teach you how to hold a pencil very rudely. And there's different ways to do it. There's different ways to practice and warm up holding a pencil. There's also different ways to hold down a ruler. I personally like spider fingers across the ruler and then my pinky finger on the page. I think it's the least amount of slide and the most amount of resistance against my pencil. So don't be afraid of these things. Google the dumbest tutorials you've ever seen. One time I looked one up and found out that I was using my French curve wrong. Get a lot of French curves. A lot of little French curves. Don't go big. Especially if you don't know if you're going to stick with it. Alright, welcome to part 3. This is going to be basic perspective and isometric views, as well as plane views, which can be under perspective depending who you talk to and whether or not they like each other. What's important about this is that you do not need to know this on your own. There are textbooks for that. And to go over it again, I would highly suggest at least downloading a PDF and reading back to back the Basic Perspective Drawing, a Visual Approach by John Montague. I have the 5th edition. I like the 5th edition. I don't know anything about the other editions. I'm not going to cover all the things in this book. I would just suggest reading it. Unfortunately, artists are not good at writing textbooks, so that means you have to read it like a novel, cover to cover, in my opinion. If you have the opportunity to learn. Reading sucks. It takes a long time. I'm super dyslexic. But, I'd rather do something I hate doing on purpose than something I hate doing on accident. And then if I'm not going to have fun that day, might as well just do the unfun thing, you know? But when it comes down to it, here on page 38, we're going to find the sketchings of the different kinds of planes. So you're going to have what is basically the plane, 45, 30, 60, and isometric views. You're also going to have a floor plan as well. And these are the different ways you can orient yourself. I would highly suggest, if you are interested in just drawing buildings and maps, to just go for isometric. Just learn isometric views, understand them, figure out how buildings mash together, how you know where your horizon line is, how those perspective points work. I would recommend isometric. Now, for people who want a little bit more out of this, like a little bit more for like a D&D campaign where you have the building at multiple angles and it has a little bit more of a dimension approach, I would go for the planes where you work with the floor plan. And then for anybody else, if you want to be a big boy and you want to start working towards being a building type artist, you have all the tools necessary. You do not need to draw freehand. There is the 45, 30, and 60 degrees. It's all math. It's all math all the way down. So we're going to hop back a bit. We're going to look at page 39 here just for a second and look at this evil creature. Doing this sucks. I've done it a couple times. I've done it wrong a couple times too, which also sucks. But you have the game. The game will allow you to do this without you having to do it wrong accidentally. So as you're following along, build the building you also want to build here. And that way you actually know how it's going to fit together instead of just trying to guess and learn from your mistakes. My least favorite way to learn how to draw. If we go to page now 30, you'll find how to elevate a floor plan. So this is an elevation method. This is one I use personally a lot, where you have kind of the idea of what your building should already be shaped like and what it should look like from the inside, so then you can make its outsides. I find it very difficult to imagine the outsides of an object when I work with the insides first, but that's me personally. So what I like for here is that when you go to highlight stuff, it will show you the plane that it's on and where it is in perspective. And I could even roll it up and down nicely if I can grab it right. Yeah. And so that way I can work with that as being the beginning of my floor plan and where like walls would be naturally or not occur if the person was specifically working around those ideas. Within perspective and within where your eye view is, please read the book. There is multiple drawings that you can do. You can also just do it with the parallel lines. We love parallel lines. We love oblique planes as well. There is warping though. Warping is one of the greatest issues you will occur as you learn how to draw buildings, and it is when, alright, perspective isn't real. It is actively kind of wrong. It actively is like a little wrong and a little not real. And what's important about that is that it needs to be acknowledged overall. It's not real. It is an illusion that people catch the eye of. The people who were even working on it at the time understood that it had flaws and it has things that are untrue within it. But do you know what is true? Math. So you can use the math to support your untrue stuff, and that's why you can draw evil things in perspective that just don't even seem like they make sense. Because they don't, but it's a good illusion. You know? It's a good illusion that people got obsessed about. Visual illusions were very popular for a while. I find them confusing because I'm not good at math, but still. So within this, it is all an illusion. And so within that illusion, you'll get warping. If your plane is too low or too high of where you're beginning your drawing and where those points are, you'll get warping. You already have your planes chosen for you. You don't have to pick them yourself. I found it to be one of the hardest things when I first started taking buildings really seriously, is that I would have no idea where planes began and ended and where I should start something so it doesn't warp. And all the professors I ever spoke to would try to give me things to like help orient me. But in all honesty, now that I can do it, the real answer is that there is a learned thing where you can look at it and see that it's wrong. It's just a skill. But luckily, there's drawing isometric as well, which will save you from a lot of warping. But the planes show the cubulars here, you know? And then there's parallel line drawing. This is the beginnings of perspective. Once you get out of parallel lines, you'll go into doing larger point perspective. So that's working with a certain point in space that is the beginning, aka you, and or a thing from the point of your observation, or the horizon. Or you can get evil with it, you know, get funky. But you can do it. You can draw. I would highly suggest you try. This is a good place to start because you can even just fiddle around with it and trace it if you really like to. But just talk about what you're doing. When people say, like, don't do this, don't do that, it's don't claim your freehand. That's really, at the end of the day, all you need to do. You didn't draw it freehand. That's okay. A lot of people can't draw freehand. You drew it either assisted, traced, or with math. I do see people who freehand it with math, and I do not understand how they do it. I think I would die if I tried. But there's a lot of beauty in this. And you don't have to do it in perspective. You can do it isometrically. Your favorite video game might be isometric. If you look at those isometric objects, though, in real view, most of the time they're like horrifically warped because they're trying to create a false isometric view that looks more like it's in perspective. But you don't need to. Have it look like a miniature. Treat it like a miniature, you know? You don't have to, is what I'm trying to say. Don't be afraid to try these things out. And I think this is a great program to start with if you want to draw buildings and cities that aren't modern. I find that most programs are really good for building modern cities because of the laws and rules they're built around. But most classical cities are built in curves, and John wanted to fuck over Mitzi, and so now there's a house in the middle of her yard, you know? More classical, more medieval stuff. I wish they had a thatch option. They do not have an option for thatch, and so then you can't pull the roof down really low, but you can just mark it on the map that when you draw it, you want that roof to be thatch. You know? Maybe you assign a color to be thatch. Like a roof color. My phone gave up the ghost. He's had enough. He couldn't even upload all the images I took to Drive, so I'm like down more images than I originally planned to be. But if you have a Pixel 4a, Google will be contacting you that your phone is gonna go kaput, and they'll give you like $50. So that's the good news. Peace and love.